All of our current problems and issues today on this planet can be traced back to Enki's and Enlil's dysfunction.
Yes, family
correct?
feud.
As brothers?
As
As rival brothers, yes.
Rival brothers, yeah.
This came into my head yesterday. Is there any karmic resolution for these two? For
Yes,
what they
there
have
is.
caused for the thousands and thousands of years of suffering?
Well, let me explain the role of Enlil. Enlil Zeus. Okay, so Enlil was Zeus to the Greeks. He was known as Elion to the early Hebrews, to the Sumerians. He was actually the good guy. The bad guy was Enki. Enki was he was like the head scientist of the
Master
biogenetic-
geneticist.
Yeah, master geneticist. And he was the head scientist of Shuruppak, which was the Iberian stronghold that was in charge of all the genetic experiments and tampering. And so what they did is in order to corrupt the pure bloodline of Adam, Lyran, Michael, they started mixing the existing human race, which is what we were back then during the Atlantean times, when we used to live for thousands of years. And they started adding the genetics of primitives to lower down their IQs, to lower down their intelligence, to put them at a lower state of reality. Not only did they do that, but they started also tampering with animal genetics. They started mixing humans. They took the existing Ternesian 12-strand DNA human and they started mixing them with different types of animals. And that gave us all the creatures.
Centaurs.
Exactly.
Cyclops, mermaids,
yeah, and that gave us all the creatures of mythology.
So all this stuff is not myth. It's all fact, and it all happened.
Yes, he was Poseidon.
It's Poseidon.
He was Poseidon, the half brother of Zeus, and he was given the seas, and of course Africa. And Enlil was given the Mesopotamia area. So the way Zechariah Sitchin translated it, and the way the ancient Samaritans were written, was they were actually rewritten to make Enlil Jehovah Zeus seem like the bad guy. So
they're inaccurate.
Yes, they're inaccurate.
Wow.
Very inaccurate.
Wow.
And make Enki Poseidon and his lineage look like the saviors of humanity. But you have to also understand that it was Marduk, the son of Enki, who was absolutely reptilian. His mother was also 100% pure Draco royalty. And so when Enki had an affair with Damkina gave birth to Marduk, and then Marduk became Belial, who is what we, who's all the, how can I say it? He's Satan, he's the reason why the Cabal has been sacrificing children for thousands of years. They've been sacrificing them to Marduk, Belial.
My God.
Yeah,
I need a breather. I need a breather.
He's what you call the Anunnaki that's been at the head of the Cabal since 12,000 years ago.
Right.
Yeah.
And what you're explaining now is all, like, it gets even more complex. This is just kind of surface level facts of these power players, and we could spend 12 days talking about this stuff.
Yeah, this is surface stuff.
There's millions of years of history.
Oh my God, libraries of information.
Actually, it goes into billions of years.
Billions, I bet.
I'm just covering Galactic Wars, which encompasses 560 million years.
So all this stuff is still like beginner level stuff for the listeners out there.
Yes, it is.
Oh my God.
Now,
God.
If you want to go back to the original war in the cosmos that took place beyond our galaxy in the 11th dimension or the 12th dimension, that was actually 820 billion years ago. That's when, that's when the
820 billion years ago.
Yes, that was the war of the Elohim, and then later it was the war of the fallen Elohim against the Elohim. Those were known as the electrical wars that took place about 520 billion years ago.
Right.
And then finally, we that war later translated into our galaxy 560 million years ago. So yes, we're dealing with a lot of universes. We're dealing with
a lot of information,
a lot of history that goes back to billions of years.
Right.
We've heard a lot about Atlantis. Can you speak more to Lemuria and Mu too?
Sure. So Lemuria was so Mu was the first great seeding after Tiamat's destruction. It was actually Lemuria before it became Lemuria. It was known as Mu. And during those days, many extraterrestrial species came to the Earth to create this great experiment that was supposed to act as the guardian, the new guardian race of the entire universe. And so many extraterrestrials came to Mu to bring forth their DNAs to create the most powerful beings ever. And then that's when our original ancestors were developed, was back in Mu. So that's where we come from. We're
Right.
part of that Terranesian lineage. Yeah. And Mu was beautiful. It was like a paradise, a Garden of Eden. You know, the inhabitants of Mu did not have any external technology. They were all about consciousness-based technology where they fused with the elements in order to manipulate the elements with their mind. And that's how they would be able to control the weather at will and the crystals and the stones. It was similar to the movie Avatar, where the species were in in a symbiotic relationship with their planet. And they were just one ecosystem.
Wow.
That's how Mu was.
Peaceful, harmonious.
Harmonious.
Like you said.
What started off as Mu eventually became Lemuria as the inhabitants started to become denser and denser through the process of involution. Again, you know, we're dealing with, you know, they used to be 8th dimensional race, and then they went to the 6th dimension. So now we have the Lemurians. The Atlanteans were part of the 5th dimension.
Wow.
And so, when they fell into the 6th dimension in order to become more condensed and succeed in this idea of polarity integration, which is the idea of merging spirit and matter, higher dimensions and lower dimensions, higher chakras and lower chakras. So they were part of that process as to why they were condensing. And everything was fine. Everything was fine. You know, we had other existing colonies then. We had the Rama colony, which existed in today's India region. We had the Yucatan colony, or the Mayan colony, which existed in today Mesoamerica, what we call Mexico, Central America, around that region. And then we also had the Yu colony, which existed in today's China region. So we had, and then of course, Atlantis in its original form was Alania. Alania was formed too as the 5th colony. So everything was in harmony, with Lemuria being the mother colony of all the other 4 colonies. And the Atlanteans, the original Atlantis, started developing an external technology. So they were, again, they were experimenting now in the 5th dimension, right? Where things were more condensed. And while the other civilizations were in the 6th dimension, but they were all still coexisting, and at the same time in a harmonious way. So what happened was, unfortunately for Atlania, many members of the Orion Empire began to infiltrate it through a Stargate. So the Stargate came from Mars. Mars was the original, I guess, experimentation in the infiltration process of our solar system. And that's what caused the Great Seeding to collapse, by the way. They used a doorway or interdimensional door portal that connected Mars to Orion in order to create and develop their army here on the planet called Maldek, which is now the Kuiper Belt, which is right outside of we used to exist between Jupiter and Pluto. So there was another jovial planet that was also the size of Jupiter called Maldek. Yeah, so at one point our solar system did have 12 planets, by the way. So what happened was they came into Atlantis. They started bringing more of the draconian technology into place, and they were able to use that technology to control the crystals within the Earth. So they developed an AC type of advanced technology that was able to harness neighboring celestial objects. So back then we used to have 2 moons when Lemuria, Alania, and all the other colonies coexisted in peace. And so the Atlanteans then became the Atlanteans after they changed their name, after they overthrew the Council of Light, and now it was run under the new Dark Council of the Orion Orion Empire. And so what they do is they use this AC advanced technology to bring forth the 2nd moon, because back then Earth had 2 moons, and they, in a non-diplomatic way, they decided to show the other colonies that Atlantis meant business. So they used this moon and they brought it into the vicinity of Lemuria, who was then the mother continent out of all the other 4 continents, and they imploded it over Lemuria. So that happened about 50,000 years ago.
Wow.
And that's how Lemuria was destroyed. And all we have left today is the remaining little island of Hawaii.
Right.
Which was part of the Lemurian continent.
Which
It
was
huge.
wow.
Yeah, it was as big as the United States and Canada put together.
That's
but in the
ridiculous.
Pacific Ocean.
That's
how big it was.
What was I going to say? We've all had lifetimes in Atlantis. Most of the people on Earth.
Yes, and in Lemuria.
And in Lemuria.
Yes. But luckily, the Lemurians, who were very spiritually evolved, foresaw the attacks through their clairvoyance,
Mhm.
and
Wow.
for the most part, they resorted into the inner earth, and they still continue to exist today in the inner
Hollow
earth.
Earth,
Hollow Earth,
which I
yeah,
wanted to ask you
of
about. There
course.
are still Hollow Earth civilizations
Yes.
currently subsurface.
Yes.
When will they make contact with us?
By no later than 2024. Once the Earth is fully has been fully restored back into the galactic community, they will eventually reunite with us. Yes, they're waiting for that day of
Essentially,
revelation.
beings coming out of the ground and
Well, not necessarily coming out of the ground. There's different stargates. Yeah,
stargates.
they just pop out into our reality.
Oh,
We've
gotcha.
been living in the Earth for thousands and thousands of years, waiting for you guys to get it right, so that we could reunite with you guys.
Waiting for us to
otherwise-
raise our vibrations.
Exactly. Because the inhabitants of the inner Earth are very spiritually evolved. They're very peaceful. I think there's only like 1 or 2% of the species that went to the inner Earth that were hostile, and they had to do with reptilians and the Greys and stuff.
Right.
And among other, aliens that decided to create an underground network. But for the most part, our Earth is kind of like a honeycomb shaped. In the inner Earth aspect of the Earth is honeycomb shaped, with there's caverns everywhere. There's an inner sun, and that's the core of the Earth. It also acts as an inner sun. There's lakes. There's streams of water. There's forests.
I was about
There's
to ask,
oceans.
how is it living under Earth in Hollow Earth for thousands of years and not having access to the sun when the core of the Earth acts as a sun?
Exactly. Well, it's like a miniature sun.
Gotcha.
Yeah, they get it is emitting the same light rays as our sun.
Right.
So they get the same nourishment that we do, except it's better because they don't have the pollution we do.
Right.
Yeah,
They're much healthier.
much healthier. Yeah, and they're very tall, very healthy. Most of the men are, they're very buff, and they have six packs, and the women are.
Are you from Hollow Earth?
Perhaps no, I'm not from Hollow Earth. Actually, I'm from Sirius to be exact.
you?
And Lyra. I originated Lyra, but I
Lyra.
represent the Lyra and Sirius Anuhasi lineage.
Gotcha.
Through Enlil's lineage, Jehovah Sue's, not through Enki's lineage.
No.
So talking about Supernaphim, Seraphim, and Seconaphim, can you break down why we can't perceive angelic beings? Do they surround us constantly?
They are, yes. All the dimensions are coexisting all around us, all at the same time, all the way up to the 15th dimension, where the central universe is. So we are actually in the midst of the central universe. We just don't perceive it that way. We're seeing things from a different perspective. But these higher angelic figures are part of what I call in my book the first celestial organization, which became known as the Eternal of Days. So they operate as functionaries of the Eternal of Days, which is the governing administration that governs the realms of the Central Mother Universe. And so they don't have free will, in a sense where they're different aspects of the one.
Right.
Yeah, it's like the one breaking itself up into different aspects to secure the realms and to make sure that everything goes according to the great divine plan and all the multiverses.
They're all connected to our DNA.
Yes, they are all connected to our DNA as well.
Gotcha.
So one of the things I would like to share with people is that when we talk about angels, archangels, those are archetypes. Those are archetypes that exist within us. So when you're praying to Archangel Michael, you're actually praying to an aspect of yourself. When we all connect with our higher self, we realize that we are source and embodiment, that we have all the cosmic race exists within us. All the angels and archangelics, the Supernaphim, the Seconaphim, the Seraphim, and the highest orders of legions, they're all within our DNA, people. That's how powerful we are.
Talk to them, you're talking to a higher aspect of yourself.
Absolutely. Yes, because there is no difference between us and them. There is no separation.
Right, there is no
It's
separation.
one big, gigantic, cosmic soul that fragmented itself and divided itself over the eons of time
To experience
to
itself.
experience more of itself. And that's what we are. We are the final result of that as individuated units of consciousness, but still as we are like the cells in the universe, you have to think about it in a way where even our cells, all trillions of them within our biology, is in its own universe. It's its own universe, and then the cycle repeats again.
Right.
And then
It never ends.
Infinity, yeah. And then our universe is one big gigantic cosmic cell in the body of the motherverse.
Just to like when I woke up 5 years ago and I downloaded all this information, so it was overwhelming. It was and I'm still integrating all of that information still. So what pieces of advice do you have to any listeners out there who are starting to wake up?
My advice is to have an open mind. Take what resonates. Do your own research. Investigate things for yourself. And most importantly, go within, because it is through the process of meditation where you're going to be able to connect with your own higher self. I'm not here to be, the person who gives forth the information. I'm here to remind you that you also have access to this information. I'm just kind of triggering you so that you realize that, you have access to your own Akashic records. I just access mine, and that's how I was able to write this book.
Mm-hmm.
So I just want to let everyone know that, we're all God in embodiment. There is no separation. We're all one in the universe, in the multiverse. We're all part of a bigger organism. We're also, even though we're cells within the bigger organisms, we're still part of that organism. And all we have to do is meditate so that we can remember that.
And the meditation and the stillness is very important because we live in a society that's just so distracting, so loud,
Instant
so
gratification.
noisy.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's why there's so much power in stillness and meditation.
Stillness and meditation.
Yes.
So I've read this number many times in many pieces of spiritual literature. The 144,000. Can you explain who the 144,000 are?
Absolutely. So the 144,000 has to do with two things. It has to do with 144 strands of DNA that was given to us at the highest level of reality.
DNA expression.
DNA expression, as well as 144,000 oversouls that are coming from the 13th dimension and up to incarnate at this time without any karma or anything because they are already ascended beings.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting.
They're here to help the planet, and they volunteered. And they decided to come because back in the 50s, our planet was heading into a nuclear war.
Mm-hmm.
It was heading into a downward spiral where the Earth was going to be destroyed. So a shout out was called by the Earth herself, because the Earth is a living entity, just like our solar system, our galaxy, and our universe.
Mm-hmm.
We're dealing with the living cosmos, people.
Right.
Everything is alive. So the Earth called out for help, and the 144,000 oversouls responded. And so they've been incarnating in waves since the 60s, late 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. Yeah.
Dolores Cannon talked about that. The 3
Yes.
waves of volunteers.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right. Right.
So one of the things that I want people to know about, especially if you guys are starseeds out there, or even if you're not a starseed, like I said, take what resonates, and if it resonates with you, great. If it doesn't, do your own research. But the 144,000 are actually part of this idea that we are emerging and as an avatar down here on the Earth. We're still coexisting on different levels of reality. We're still on our mothership, monitoring things from the higher dimensions. We were the commanders. We are the commanders. We are the intergalactic forces. We are the gatekeepers. We are the guardians of galaxies and universes. And in order for us to exist here, is that we're projecting a portion of our consciousness down into the 3rd dimension.
Mm-hmm.
And this is just an avatar that was developed for us in order for us to also be the ground crew. So that's what we are down here doing, is we're actually the boots on the ground.
Right. And I kept asking myself over the years, why isn't there more help? We are the help.
Yes, we are what everyone's expecting when they're talking about the return of this, the return of the angels, the return of the gods and goddesses, the return of the Christ and the angels. They're all referring to us. The 144,000 are the saviors of humanity, and hence the saviors of the entire universe, because everyone's counting on us.
That's insane.
Yeah, because what happens on the Earth is actually going to have repercussions throughout all existence, both forward in time and backward in time.
Right.
We're at actually the hub. Earth is at the hub of all timelines.
Right.
So even though there's all these probabilities and infinite possibilities in which things could go into any direction of these probabilities, what happens on the Earth is going to collapse all those probabilities, and then that's what's going to remain as the all-existing timeline. That's how important it is.
I've heard there's many different first versions of Earth due to the timeline wars.
Yes, there
Is that
is.
correct? How many
Yes.
first versions? There's 50, I heard.
There could be more, but they're all existing on parallel universes.
Parallel
Yes.
universes. Okay.
So to give you an example of that, in one of these parallel universes, Atlantis was never infiltrated.
Mhm.
So Atlantis is still in its golden age, and we still have the 4 colonies coexisting: Lemuria, Rama, Yu, and Maya. And they're still coexisting in harmony, the 5 major colonies. And another aspect, Lemuria never became Lemuria, was still Mu, In another aspect, Egypt was never corrupted and infiltrated, and so it's still the golden age of Egypt. So in these parallel Earths, we have aspects of ourselves existing as pharaohs, as high priest, as high priestess, as guardians and keepers of the stargates as well.
Right.
So yeah, they're all coexisting all at the same time.
You mentioned Egypt. Just out of curiosity, what records are located under the Great Sphinx?
The halls of records.
The halls of records.
Yes.
And what's contained within these records?
The Akashic records of all time.
The Akashic records.
Yes. Yes. They reveal galactic history that would take volumes and volumes. It would actually fill up an entire library of galactic history. I mean, in my book, I condensed it, even though I went to great detail, but it was just in comparison to the true history of our galaxy, in consideration of the millions and millions inhabited worlds that exist within our Milky Way, not to mention the other worlds that exist within the other billions of galaxies. I mean, we're talking about, thousands of full filled libraries full of cosmic history here.
Right.
So the halls of records are actually accessible by those that have the gift of spirit and understanding to access those records. And from what I understand is when this ascension takes place, when the sun releases its final flash and the transformation of species occur, those halls of records are actually going to be revealed to the people.
Disclosure.
Disclosure. Well, that's going to be the ultimate disclosure, but disclosure is already happening.
It's already happening
Yeah,
slowly.
it's already slowly in increments. But that's like the gold of disclosure. That's, revealing the true history that spans billions of years of universes and cosmos. Yeah.
Could you say mass hysteria or just
Not
chaos?
At all. No, not at all.
Not at all.
This is going to take place after the ascension. So
Gotcha.
Yeah. So those that are ascending in what I call the positive timeline, not the artificial or inorganic one, are going to actually be people that are going to be able to take the knowledge from these records and use it in a good way and understand it and how can I say it, and really just access their own memories of all their different incarnations and lifetimes due to these records. They're going to know who they are. Yeah.
A lot of great information here.
So good.
So good.
I also want to point out that the halls of records, when they become released to the public upon the ascension, it has also a lot to do with us regaining our memories. So those records also exist within us. Remembering, yes.
Gotcha.
So they exist within us too. It's not just like physical things that we read.
Access
It's an energetic template.
Right.
It's an etheric energetic template that will be accessible by those that make the positive timeline ascension.
Right.
Yeah. So
Raising their vibrations high enough to access
those records.
Right.
On the point of raising vibrations, can you tell us more about spiritualizing organic matter?
Absolutely. Meditation is the thing, even if you are into Tai Chi, what is it called? Qigong, whatever it takes for you to raise your frequency, to be in that state of mind where it is known as no mind. Because when you're in that state of mind that is known as no mind, that's when you access your own 0-point field. And when you access that 0-point field, you realize that you are one with source, that one with God. And at that point, you start creating, manifesting at a rate where you begin to materialize things spontaneously with your mind.
Wow.
So that's how we become spiritual, is by realizing that we are, one with creator source. There is no separation.
We have access. Anyone has access to this 0-point energy field.
Yes.
In any given moment, if they commit to the practice.
Absolutely. Yes.
So what was more fun, moving things with telekinesis or manifesting?
I would say telekinesis, because it was done in a way where I didn't see my mind within my skull. I saw that my mind was a morphogenetic field that encompassed everything around me.
Yeah.
And so that's how I was able to do that.
Wow.
Very cool.
You mentioned in your book that George Lucas happened to be tapping into the Akashic records to write Star Wars.
Absolutely.
Star Wars is a remembering of the galactic wars in Orion.
Yes. And there's a lot of significance in the concepts of the Jedis and the Sith. The Jedi actually represents the lineage of Michael. And it's funny because Sirius B, which is the great bright star, is a blue star. And then that's where the lineage of the Lyrian, lineage of Michael originated from, is Sirius.
Right.
That gave us the Anuhasi. And then the lineage of Draco Lucifer, which is represented by the color red, originated off of Draconis and Orion.
The Siths.
So the Siths, when you think of the Siths, which is a hybrid between a galactic humanoid and a Draconian, I mean, they have hominid bodies, but their face looks like the, like what's his name?
Beastly reptilian.
Beastly reptilian, just like all the Siths.
Yeah.
All the Siths in those movies. So George Lucas was actually retrieving symbolically all this information, but he, gave it his own twist, and
Right.
he wrote it in his own way of describing this galactic war between,
Creative spin to his own.
exactly, between the Republic and the Galactic Empire.
Right.
In this case, the Republic is represented by the Galactic Federation. In our case,
Galactic Fit, which brings us to our next question: who consists of the Galactic Federation?
all the galactic humanoid worlds that were in favor of the light against the draconian Orion Empire.
Gotcha.
So it all started as a coalition of light that began with Lyrian Sirian. The Pleiadians joined, the Arcturians, the Andromedans, Epsilon Eridani jumped in, Epsilon Boots, Alpha Centauris, Beta Centauri, and Mintaka, and just several free systems within the upper Orion region. Eventually, later, what started off as a coalition of light developed into the Galactic Federation 5 million years ago. But there was already a resistance in Orion. Before the Federation started, there was an organization by the free humanoids that existed in Upper Orion that developed what became known as the Black League of Orion. And the Black League of Orion was the ones that were actually holding off the Orion Empire from going into other parts of the galaxy before the Federation was formed. So yeah, the humanoid galactic species, who are actually our ancestors, were always 2 steps ahead of the Orion Empire, luckily.
Wow.
So now,
cool. This is so cool.
So throughout galactic history, the Galactic Federation has been acting as a legal and moral ethical compass between the different galactic, intergalactic, type 1, type 2, and type 3 stellar cultures in order to not only maintain peace and harmony, but also in order to combat the expanding Orion Empire. So that's been their main purpose,
right?
Is to secure, a peaceful, harmonious galaxy. And then, of course, secure our solar system, the Earth, which is the most important solar system and planet, not only in our galaxy, but in the entire universe or multiverse. Yeah. So that's been their role. So
next, I'm curious about polarity integration. Can you speak more on that?
Sure. So every universe, every galaxy, so everything, you have to understand, the lower dimensions, everything's a game. It's a game. So even duality is part of this game. It's polarity opposites. So everything, it's one becoming two in order to explore more of itself, but also collapsing back into the one. And so in our galaxy, the reptilians, Dracos, represented the dark side. The galactic humanoids of Lyra represented the light. And so the whole purpose of this polarity integration is to also realize that in the higher dimensional realms, before we became physical, we were all children of the one, including our fallen brethren, those who followed Lucifer. Right. So the whole point of this polarity integration was a two-way process. It was to restore, by humans inheriting the external technology of the reptilians, and then in turn the humanoids taught the reptilians how to meditate so that they could overcome their animosity and their rage, so that they could find a middle point in which they could finally live in harmony. But it didn't go that way, unfortunately. The second aspect of polarity integration is integrating spirit and matter, or unifying the higher chakras and the lower chakras. So in the case of the galactic humanoids, every time they geared towards spiritual development at the expense of rooting themselves in the lower chakras or in the matter, they were confronted by the Dracos, by the higher ups. It was orchestrated where the Dracos were allowed to create a conflict with them in order for them to remember that they have to solve that issue.
So that conflict was planned on a higher level.
Yes, from a higher level of reality beyond our galaxy, this whole galactic war was planned. Exactly, it was planned to create greater growth. And this greater growth, the ultimate arrival was unconditional compassion, because unconditional compassion is at the heart of all creation. So what will bring back duality and collapse it back into the oneness of everything is by realizing that even evil is not something that exists outside of ourselves, but it's also within us. So when we do the inner work, and this is what's happening right now with the star seeds and the light workers, is that we're being forced to face our shadows. We're being forced to face our shadows because we're living in a time where we have to collapse the duality polarity back into neutral singularity.
0 point balance.
0 point balance. Okay. Yeah. In order to, allow for the entire ascension of the galaxy to take place. So what we star seeds do here on the Earth, by going within and neutralizing and collapsing the duality that exists within us, which is a reflection of the galactic wars, right? Everything's a hologram.
As above, so below.
As above, so below. Then by doing so, then we end all of evil. and everything, it just becomes pure bliss light.
So the answer is always self-mastery.
Self-mastery and unconditional love, compassion. Yeah,
It's amazing.
Beautiful.
It's
that
amazing.
is that is at the heart of this collapsing the polarity duality, is realizing that we have the shadow within that we have to work through,
Mm.
and we have to integrate it with our light.
Mhm.
Because when we do that, we also bring balance to the external
Right.
reality, which is the simulation that we're all a part
The simulation, keyword simulation.
of.
So let's bring it back to DNA
Sure.
and how scientists have labeled junk DNA when there is no such thing as junk DNA. And how we have been unplugged and we are operating at 10% or even less than that. You said 4%.
4%.
What can the listeners do moving forward to somewhat repair these remaining strands of DNA?
By keeping their body cleans, by meditating, going within, spending time in nature as much as possible.
Much as possible.
Whether it's an ocean, lake, or whether it's a mountain, forest. Nature has a lot of healing properties. If we spend time, the more we spend time in nature, the more we're going to be healing ourselves, so that other 96% of our DNA could unravel. But also automatically, due to the photonic energy that is coming in from our sun via the galactic core, or from our galactic core via our sun, sorry, we're also activating the other 12 strands.
Mm-hmm.
So as I speak right now, the human race is currently going through a genetic mutation at the cellular level. In order for you to access your higher strands of DNA, even beyond the 12, I would suggest keeping your bodies clean, no alcohol, no drugs, no
Mhm.
cigarettes, eating superfoods, vegetables, organic fruits, and stuff that is just living.
Yep.
Because when you eat living stuff, you're actually doing a good thing for your other DNA.
Mhm.
And so
On multiple levels of
on
reality.
multiple levels, yeah, because it's what we do with our body, it's all connected to our spirit and
Mhm.
stuff. In fact, our bodies is almost like a materialization of an extension of our spirit in our
Right.
mind.
Right.
Even though we see it as an avatar, eventually we're going to spiritualize it.
Right.
As we transform, as we become DNA, or as our DNA becomes activated, we are going to be able to integrate all aspects of ourselves into this physical form, because this is the only physical form that was designed, whereas no other species out there could do it, where you could embody all 12 dimensions at once, which is like what God does. Yeah. So we have what is called the God gene. We have the God,
God gene,
the God particle, the God code,
The God
and
spark.
the God spark. No other species has it, but we do. So we were designed, for our biologies, was designed to develop itself into the point where they access absolute power. We begin to access absolute power.
We are God, Goddess incarnate.
Yes, we are source and embodiment.
Source and embodiment.
And all the species out there, all the aliens, all the angels, all the Supernaphim, Seconaphim, they all know that. They all know that we are the ones that are going to be, superseding and bypassing them all.
We just have to do the work on ourselves
Yes,
to achieve that.
absolutely.
I have a curious question about Mars.
Mm-hmm.
Mars was destroyed due to nuclear fallout, is that correct?
Absolutely, yeah. And all the remnants that indicate that are still there. Our scientists have found radioactive decay, radioactive elements that were still hanging out. They found old riverbeds, dried up oceans.
There's a face monument on the surface.
Right.
I learned that it was King Anu's face.
It was.
It was. So that is correct.
That is correct, yeah.
And for the listeners out there, you can go and research this. Research the face monument on Mars, on the surface of Mars.
Mhm.
It was built in tribute to King Anu.
Yes, because King Anu was serving as a commander of the Niburian Council during the Galactic Wars, during the times where the Draco infiltrated our solar system during the first Great Seeding. And so he was in charge of that, but he was, again, the Niburian planet, the way it was designed, it only came into our solar system every 3,600 years.
Right.
So every time it was out of our solar system, it was actually patrolling other solar systems in its long elongated
orbit.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow. According to the Prism of Lyra,
Mhm.
white holes and black holes are entry points and exit points. Is this accurate?
Yes, and every sun has one.
Every sun has.
Every sun has a black hole and a white hole, an entry
Gotcha.
point and exit point.
Gotcha.
And the entire universe is connected through these stargates. Not just our sun, but also the galactic sun, or the core of each galaxy, has a huge black hole and a huge white hole that acts as an interdimensional doorway to other galaxies and other universes. So if you going back to the type 3 civilizations that I mentioned earlier, there's actually type 4 and type 5.
Mhm. Wow, there's 4 and 5.
Yeah, there's 4 and 5.
Would you care to define that?
Sure. So we've established that Type 3 is capable of harnessing the entire power of a galaxy, right? Well, a Type 4 harnesses the entire power of a universe, and that's billions of galaxies. Yes. Yeah, they're considered 48 strands of DNA, and they are beyond immortal. You know, at that point of reality, I mean, they could just they create new and new universes, you know.
Manifested in an instant.
Exactly. So the reason why new and new universes are being formed is because the intelligences that occupy Type 4 civilization are using their brain power at that level of reality to manifest, you know, new and new creations. They're what you consider creator gods. The creator gods, yeah.
Creator gods. Gotcha.
Now, beyond the Type 4, we have a Type 5. That's omniverse. That encompasses the entire Mother Central Universe. At that point, they're able to harness the entire power of the multiverse. And that's where it ends. You can't go beyond that.
Beyond that, that's, yeah.
That's everything.
Yeah.
So with my history as a pharmacist, I'm curious what you have to say around, you know, these bodies and how so many people are taking pharmaceuticals these days.
All right. The truth of the matter is that petrochemical companies were developed by the Nazis, and through a cabal organization, the pharmaceutical companies, as well as NASA and as well as the CIA, were all developed by the, you know, through Project Paperclip. Yeah, that's when the Nazis infiltrated our country and established these agencies, and part of that was to control the medical industry as well. So through the Rockefeller foundations, they were able to develop the American Medical Association, and so the pharmaceutical drugs that were developed were actually experimented on the Jews before they were employed over here in the States to see which ones were lethal and which ones were not. But overall, the truth is that they're actually bad for you. They're, you know,
They keep us sick.
They keep, not only do they keep you sick, but they actually do the opposite of what they're told to do. You know?
And more detrimental
It's more
to your
detrimental.
overall health.
Exactly. They're designed to destroy your immunity,
And
And
then, which affects the DNA
which
eventually,
affects
right?
the DNA, because the whole purpose is they are trying to prevent us from activating, you know, even the chemtrails, you know, the poisoning of our foods, fluoride, that's all designed to keep us operating at 4% capacity, because they know of this great prophecy. They all know that the prophecy said that at the end of the 20th century, at the rise of the 21st, at the beginning of the 21st century, a new race of humans would emerge that would be compared to X-Men. They would have these superpowers, and that's it. They would just overthrow all that's evil and dark. And so that's what we're doing right now, is we're going through this genetic mutation.
And we're paying them. These are multi-billion-dollar companies.
Yeah. Yes,
we're paying them.
Yes.
As a collectively.
We are.
To keep us trapped.
By default of our ignorance of what's really
right. Right. And so therein lies the compassion.
Exactly.
Well, we're pretty much at the end of it.
Is there anything you would like to add?
Anything you want to add?
Yeah.
I tend not to be political, okay? But I do want to point out that what's playing out right now in the geopolitical situation with our world, particularly the Russia-Ukraine scenario, has a lot to do with the final defeat of the cabal. The cabal is represented by the UN, NATO, the World Economic Forum, and of course the Western powers. Canada's president, obviously, our president, Australia's president. They're all part of this cabal. Okay, so what Putin is doing is he's actually a white hat. He's part of the Earth Alliance. So there is a war going on between the cabal and the Earth Alliance. And because Trump wasn't given the opportunity to finish the job, the white hats are now using Putin to, you know, make sure that they block the NATO and the UN from expanding into Russia. But more importantly, something that people need to be aware of is that the current president of our country and his son have been negotiating deals with Ukraine for many, many years. And a lot of this stuff has to do with the development of biological weapons of mass destruction that would actually disseminate or obliterate, you know, 1/3 of the world population. And a lot of these facilities, they make the Wuhan lab look like candy. A lot of these facilities are located in major cities in the Ukraine. So what Putin is doing is actually trying to save billions of people from dying, even though there's a lot of casualties taking place right now in the Ukraine, but that doesn't compare to the idea of 1/3 of the world population, being mass murdered within days if the cabal was able to release these weapons of biological destruction.
Wow.
So I just wanted to let people know that, because right now we're, the media and the fake news is spinning the narrative, making it
Right.
look like
Mainstream
these-
media,
yeah.
all mainstream media, you can be sure they're not telling the truth.
They never do.
They never do.
So all our news here in the States and those countries that are associated with the UN, with the globalist, right,
Right.
with the one world government, new world order,
Right.
cabal, are actually they're telling us the opposite. They're telling us that Putin is a bad guy. Ukrainian people need help. Pray for Ukraine. But in actuality, he's fulfilling prophecy. He's known as the King of the East. The King of the West is a collaboration of all the countries that have joined the UN New World Order cabal run system.
Right.
And so he's actually preventing the New World Order from fully developing and implementing a worldwide scale government.
Interesting.
So, and not to mention, he's also blowing out those facilities in those major cities in the Ukraine in order to save billions of people from dying in the near future. So,
Right.
yeah, it's a white hat operation.
White hat
And this is all going to lead to disclosure, There's not going to be no nuclear war because the Galactic Federation is in key position to monitor this situation, because the Earth Alliance and the White Hats are actually now working with the Galactic Federation.
Gotcha.
Yes. So just to let everybody know, things are going to actually be in favor of humanity as a result of this intervention in the Ukraine. Things are going to be going forward in a positive way.
In a positive way.
Yes.
Perfect. So we've reached the now what part of our episode. We've learned so much about our true history. You've imparted so much knowledge and wisdom. What last pieces of advice can you give to the listeners out there?
Stay mindful at all times. Be in the presence, because it's when we're in the moment, in the presence, where we access our power, where we are able to materialize, manifest, and control our reality.
We control our reality.
Yes, we manifest our own reality by the power of the presence.
Ismael, it was awesome having you on the show. We would love to have you on a show at some point in the future. It's been great. This has been enlightening. Thank you for spending time with us today.
Thank you as well for having me here. It's a pleasure.
If you like this episode, please subscribe. I'm JR. You can find me at journeythroughtheawakening.com.
And I'm Helen. You can find me at heal.me.com/Helen. And where can we find you, Ismael?
You can find my book on Amazon. All you have to do is type in Our Cosmic Origin, 3 words. Or you could find me on Instagram under Project Restoration Zion #1. That's Project Restoration Zion 1. I reveal a lot of content and information regarding the galactic scenario, what's unfolding on the Earth, starseed information, and much more on my page.
Thank you again. It's been great. See you guys later.